Solo Sikoa sentenced to jail in shocking car crash setup involving Jacob Fatu. The bloodline saga just took a dark turn, and Solo Sikoa may have just crossed the line of no return. In this explosive WWE storyline twist, Solo Sikoa is sentenced to jail after allegedly trying to frame Jacob Fatu for a mysterious car crash that rocked the locker room. What does this mean for the bloodline? Has Roman Reigns lost control of his empire? And where does this leave Jacob Fatu in the war between factions? What if I told you that the real war within the bloodline wasn't about gold, power, or pride, but about betrayal so twisted, it ended behind prison walls? That the man once seen as Roman Reigns' chosen heir had orchestrated a plan so vile, even Paul Heyman refused to defend it. And that Jacob Fatu, the very enforcer Solo tried to destroy, was the one left standing when the truth was dragged into the light. This isn't just a storyline. This is a collapse of loyalty, the implosion of a dynasty, and the reckoning of a family consumed by vengeance. It began with a crash. A literal one. Late one Friday night, just hours before SmackDown was set to go live from Madison Square Garden, chaos erupted in the parking lot. Sirens, flashing red and blue, and the twisted wreckage of a black SUV shattered the stillness backstage. Inside that SUV? Jacob Fatu. Bloodied, unconscious, and left for dead. At first, no one knew what had happened. Cameras were scrambled, footage disappeared, and security mysteriously claimed the vehicle had slipped past checkpoints without being logged. WWE officials offered little beyond a carefully worded statement. An active investigation is underway. But something darker was brewing. The bloodline, once untouchable, had fractured. And within its broken pieces, a sinister truth was waiting to surface. For hours, Jacob Fatu remained in critical condition. And though his physical recovery was swift, his silence was deafening. That silence was shattered when damning footage was leaked, grainy, but unmistakable. Solo Sikoa, pacing beside the crash site minutes before police arrived. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't shocked. He looked calculated. Calm. The whispers began instantly. Had Solo Sikoa, the enforcer turned warlord, set up his own cousin? Had he tried to erase Jacob Fatu from the bloodline civil war once and for all? At first, no one wanted to believe it. Not Roman Reigns. Not Paul Heyman. Not even the WWE Universe. But the evidence kept mounting. A falsified witness statement, later traced to one of Solo's closest allies. A GPS device planted in Jacob's car, later linked to a burner phone registered under a pseudonym tied to Solo's training facility in Orlando. And most damning of all? A voicemail. Short. Cold. And devastating. He won't be in your way anymore. I made sure of that. When Jacob Fatu heard the tape, he didn't speak. He didn't cry. He simply stood, walked out of the hospital, and went silent. But the machine kept moving. WWE security, already on edge, launched a private investigation. And what they uncovered couldn't be contained. Solo Sikoa had gone rogue. He had weaponized the chaos of the bloodline's inner collapse. He had staged an accident. He had framed a brother. And in doing so, he had lit a match beneath the entire foundation Roman Reigns had spent years building. When the arrest came, it wasn't with fanfare. It was hushed, behind closed doors, in a Los Angeles holding facility just hours before SummerSlam. No dramatic standoff. No final promo. Just handcuffs. Silence. And a stunned locker room watching one of their own be led away. The WWE Universe didn't believe it at first. Work, they said. Angle. But as the courthouse released official documents, charges of felony obstruction, tampering with evidence, and attempted vehicular manslaughter became public, the reality set in. Solo Sikoa was not going to be on SmackDown. He wasn't going to be at SummerSlam. He wasn't going anywhere. Because a judge, after hearing the damning case laid bare, had sentenced him to 9 months in federal custody, and the question now loomed over the entire industry: where does the bloodline go from here? Jacob Fatu, once branded the savage outsider, is now WWE's most hunted and most admired man. The same cousin who had been painted as a wild card had become a victim of betrayal, a symbol of survival, and possibly the one true heir to the island's legacy. Meanwhile, Roman Reigns has remained eerily silent. No press release. No social media post. No public acknowledgement of Solo's actions. But sources close to the locker room say the tribal chief was blindsided, that when the voicemail leaked, Roman stared at the phone for hours. Not speaking. Not moving. And then said just 3 words, "He's not bloodline." But can a family so stained with betrayal ever truly heal? Can Jacob forgive what was done? And what happens when the man who ordered this chaos, who once took orders, returns from prison with revenge in his heart, because Solo Sikoa isn't just serving time. He's serving notice. And when he walks free, the war for the soul of the bloodline may become something far more terrifying, a fight with no rules, no leaders, and no survivors. And somewhere, in the shadows of this fractured empire, Roman Reigns is watching. Waiting. And preparing to make the most ruthless decision of his career. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning of the bloodline's darkest chapter. In the days following Solo Sikoa's sentencing, the WWE locker room fell into a stunned, uneasy silence. The cameras kept rolling, the promos aired as scheduled, but something fundamental had shifted. You could feel it in the air, like the last seconds before a storm. Solo wasn't just another heel who crossed a line. He had crossed a moral Rubicon, shattering the illusion that the bloodline's war was just about territory or titles. No. This had become personal. Criminal. And irreversible. Jacob Fatu didn't speak to the media. He didn't post on social media. Instead, he disappeared, leaving the arena quietly after Solo's sentencing was read aloud to the world. Some say he went back to California, to be with family. Others say he flew to Samoa to seek the guidance of the elders. But the truth? Only a few know. And they're not talking. Inside WWE, TripleH convened an emergency meeting. The legal team, the creative staff, the top brass, all trying to understand how they could pivot from what had once been their most electrifying faction. The Bloodline was a generational masterpiece, the product of 5 years of long-term storytelling. But now, one of its pillars was in federal custody. And the cracks in the foundation had become a full-blown collapse. Roman Reigns had not been seen since the arrest. Not at WWE HQ. Not backstage. Not even via satellite. Paul Heyman was left to hold the fort, pacing in corridors, refusing interviews, giving no comment except one spine-chilling phrase to a reporter who dared to ask what was next for the bloodline. It's not over until Roman says it's over. Meanwhile, the media frenzy was out of control. Major outlets ran headlines like WWE's Bloodline implodes amid real-life legal fallout and Solo Sikoa sentenced. What's next for Reigns, Fatu, and Heyman? Fans on Twitter exploded with theories. Some speculated Roman had known all along. Others believed Paul Heyman might have orchestrated the setup from behind the scenes. But no matter what version of the story fans clung to, one truth remained: the bloodline was at war with itself. And this time, the battlefield was bigger than a wrestling ring. In prison, Solo Sikoa's arrival was met with eerie calm. He wasn't placed in general population, not just yet. He was monitored closely, confined to a cell alone for 23 hours a day. Not because of fear for his safety, but because of who he was. A high-profile figure. A man with enemies. A man who had just tried to orchestrate one of the most scandalous frame-ups in WWE history. In his first week behind bars, he spoke to no one. Not even his lawyer. But in his second week, he made a single phone call. It wasn't to Paul Heyman. It wasn't to his legal team. It was to Roman Reigns. The content of that call remains sealed. But those close to the situation say Roman listened in silence for 2 minutes. And then hung up. Back in WWE, a new narrative was starting to rise. Jacob Fatu returned, not with words, but with fire. He stormed into Monday Night Raw unannounced, interrupting a match, dragging a steel chair behind him like a weapon of vengeance. The crowd erupted. Not because of a promo. Not because of a title. But because he was the survivor. The man who had been hunted. and now had come to hunt. He didn't speak until the final segment of the night. The arena lights dimmed, the ring bathed in white. Jacob stood center ring, looking into the camera. His voice was low, cold, and furious. "You tried to kill me, Solo. You left me for dead. But I'm still here. You sent a message, I'm sending one back. This war isn't over. And when you come back, I'll be waiting." The crowd erupted. But it wasn't the usual pop. It was different. It was a moment. WWE had shifted. The lines between reality and storyline had blurred to the point of no return. In the weeks that followed, WWE programming became must-see television. Paul Heyman gave cryptic interviews. Roman Reigns' music hit, but he never appeared. A new figure emerged backstage, Fatu. Jacob's real-life cousin. Silent. Observing. Planning. And then there were the teases. Subtle shots of Roman's throne, empty. A crown placed gently beside a flaming torch. The words, "The island awaits judgment." Meanwhile, reports began leaking from inside prison. Solo had changed. He wasn't speaking to anyone, not even his own family. But guards said they found him every morning, training. Pull-ups on the bars. Push-ups in the corner. Shadowboxing against the wall. His silence wasn't broken by anger. It was fueled by purpose. He was coming back. And he wasn't coming back to talk. The day of the WWE SummerSlam Go-Home show, a cryptic envelope was found on Triple H's desk. No return address. No fingerprints. Inside, a single photo: Jacob Fatu, standing outside his childhood home in San Jose, with a red target scrawled across his chest in INK'd. It wasn't signed, but everyone knew who sent it. Roman Reigns remained out of sight. No tweets. No interviews. No appearances. But the tension around his name built to a boiling point. It was no longer about championships. It was about control. About family. About who would rise from the ashes of the Bloodline's implosion and seize the future. As SummerSlam approached, WWE announced the unthinkable. A no-holds-barred match had been sanctioned between Jacob Fatu and a mystery opponent handpicked by Roman Reigns. The crowd buzzed. Speculation erupted. Would it be Zilla? Bronson Reed? Someone knew, but what no one expected was what happened next, because just 24 hours before SummerSlam, a van pulled up to the side gate of the arena. Federal agents emerged. And from the back of that van, shackled but smiling, stepped Solo Sikoa, released on conditional bail and ready for war. The booking had changed. The card had changed. But the stakes? They had never been higher, because now, the Bloodline wasn't fighting over gold. It was fighting for survival, and the only thing more dangerous than Solo Sikoa behind bars is Solo Sikoa with nothing left to lose. The arena was electric. SummerSlam. A sold-out stadium pulsing with energy, with fans from around the world on their feet, buzzing, chanting, waiting. Not just for a match. Not just for a storyline. But for a moment in history. The screen above the ramp flickered to black, and in stark red letters, one name appeared: Solo Sikoa. The crowd exploded in a mix of gasps and roars. Moments later, the lights went out, and when they came back on, he was there: Solo Sikoa. Fresh out of jail. A new man. Hair pulled tighter, face even more emotionless than before. His walk was slower, heavier, each step deliberate, like a man dragging his sins with him. He wore all black. No Bloodline shirt. No Roman Reigns insignia. Just a simple phrase scrawled across his vest: "I am the reckoning." Inside the ring stood Jacob Fatu, unmoved. No flinching. No fear. Just quiet fury radiating off him like heat. This wasn't about who was tougher. It wasn't even about who was right. It was about justice. Retribution. And survival. The bell rang, and what followed was not a match. It was a war. Jacob Fatu attacked first, launching himself like a missile across the ring. Forearms flew. Fists collided. Every move came with intent, with memory. Jacob wasn't just fighting solo, he was reliving the car crash, the hospital bed, the voicemail. Solo responded with brutal calm, every blow a message, every counter a reminder that prison hadn't broken him, it had focused him. The fight spilled outside the ring. Chairs shattered. Tables buckled. The steel steps were bent by bodies. At one point, Solo grabbed Jacob and slammed him into the barricade so hard it cracked. He leaned in and whispered, "I did it for the bloodline." But Jacob, dazed and bleeding, looked up with a twisted smile and hissed, "The bloodline died when you framed me." Back inside the ring, both men barely stood. The referee was long gone. Officials refused to intervene. Even security hovered cautiously at the edge of the chaos. Because everyone knew, this was bigger than wrestling. Then, just when it seemed both men would collapse from exhaustion, the music hit. A single note. A single heartbeat. Roman Reigns. The crowd lost their minds. Some screamed. Others stood frozen. After 112 days of silence, the tribal chief had returned. And he didn't walk out alone. Behind him stood Paul Heyman, ashen-faced, visibly shaking. And beside Heyman, just a step back, was Zilla Fatu. No shirt. Arms crossed. Eyes locked on the ring. Roman said nothing. He walked slowly to the ring, the air around him changing with every step. He looked down at Solo. Then Jacob. Then raised a mic. His voice was low. Deadly calm. "Look at what you've become." Solo tried to rise. Roman stopped him with a glare. "You were supposed to protect the island. You destroyed it." He turned to Jacob. "You were supposed to be the weapon. But even weapons get out of control." The crowd held its breath, and then Roman uttered the line that sent shockwaves through WWE, "There is no more bloodline." The silence that followed was suffocating. Paul Heyman's lips parted, but no words came. Zilla Fatu lowered his gaze. Solo shook his head slowly, his voice cracking as he stood. "No, yes. You promised." Roman stepped closer. "I promised to lead warriors. Not cowards who hide behind steel and lies." He turned. "Solo, you're out." And with that, Roman Reigns did something no one could believe. He Superman punched Solo Sikoa straight to the canvas. The crowd went nuclear. Jacob staggered to his feet, disbelief written across his face. Roman turned to him next. No words. Just an extended hand. An offering. A truce. Jacob hesitated. The man who once nearly destroyed him was now offering unity. Redemption. And then, Jacob reached out and shook Roman Reigns' hand. The arena erupted. Zilla nodded in the background. Heyman fell to his knees in shock, and Solo? Still on the mat, blood dripping from his mouth, watched the family he tried to control rebuild without him. Security entered the ring. Officials swarmed. And just before he was led away, Solo looked up one last time and whispered, "This isn't over." As SummerSlam faded to black, one final image remained on screen, the tribal chief Jacob Fatu, Zilla Fatu standing united, not as the bloodline, but something new, something more dangerous. And in the shadows, Solo Sikoa, now cast out, disgraced, and filled with rage, waited, because when he returns, he won't be looking for family. He'll be looking for vengeance. The aftermath of SummerSlam felt less like the closing of a show and more like the end of a war, bloody, broken, but eerily quiet. Yet, the silence didn't last long. Because what emerged in the days that followed wasn't peace, it was a new kind of empire, and a more dangerous one. Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu, once adversaries, now stood aligned. Their handshake wasn't just a moment for the cameras. It was a declaration of power. Of survival. Of evolution. What began as the bloodline had now become something entirely different. Something without rules. Without titles. Without Paul Heyman, because Roman Reigns had finally realized. He didn't need a wise man, he needed warriors. The next Friday night SmackDown opened unlike any episode in recent memory. The lights dimmed. Smoke billowed. And when the camera panned to the entrance stage, three silhouettes stood at the top of the ramp. Roman Reigns. Jacob Fatu. And Zilla fatu.no pyro. No theme music. Just the sound of tribal drums echoing through the arena when they entered the ring. Roman held the mic like a judge reading a sentence. I gave everything to the bloodline, he said, voice heavy. My sweat. My body. My name. And what did I get in return? Lies. Disrespect. Treason. He turned to Zilla Fatu and nodded. This is the future. You're looking at something new. A new order. A new era. The next generation of Samoan dominance. And then his eyes locked with the camera. Solo Sikoa, your exile is permanent. The crowd roared, but back in a dark, quiet room, somewhere far from the roar of the fans. Solo Sikoa watched on a monitor, fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. He was out on bail, but not out of WWE's orbit. His sentence loomed over him like a shadow. And what burned deeper than the betrayal was the replacement. Zilla Fatu, the kid. The rookie. The nephew, the one now wearing his spot. Solo's days were no longer filled with matches, interviews, or fanfare. They were filled with silence. Training. Planning. Revenge. He began to record video diaries, cryptic, chilling monologues that leaked online. In one clip, he stood in a concrete basement, shirtless, staring directly into the lens. You think it's over because you threw me away? He growled. You think you can replace me with blood that ain't even spilled yet? Nah. This isn't over, Yus. This is the beginning of your reckoning. His voice trembled, not with fear, but with rage. You built the empire with me. And now you're gonna watch me burn it down. The WWE universe split. Some hailed Roman's decision. Others feared the consequences. Because everyone knew, the most dangerous enemy is the one you trained yourself. Meanwhile, Jacob Fatu was beginning to feel the pressure. His alliance with Roman Reigns brought him power, yes, but also baggage. The locker room now looked at him differently. No longer the victim. No longer the outsider. But the enforcer who took Solo's spot. He found himself haunted by dreams, flashes of that wrecked SUV, the blood on his forehead, the whispered words from Solo, you were in my way. Jacob confided in Zilla. He's not done, Jacob said. I know that look. He's not sitting still. He's waiting. Zilla didn't flinch. Then we don't sit either. Zilla Fatu was unlike anyone in the new faction. Young. And proven. But dangerous in a different way. Methodical. Calculated. Watching. He began showing up in places Roman didn't expect, scouting talent, observing opponents, walking alone into rival locker rooms without fear. He wasn't trying to be the next Solo Sikoa. He was preparing to be the one Solo couldn't destroy. But the threats weren't all from outside. Rumors began circulating backstage. Paul Heyman had disappeared after SummerSlam, but now he was sending private messages to WWE personnel, offering cryptic commentary. One message read, the tribal chief may think the war is over. But a true king knows, the most dangerous attack is the one you never see coming. The question no one could answer was, who was Heyman backing now? Roman Reigns didn't respond publicly. But those closest to him said his demeanor had shifted. More guarded. More suspicious. He no longer trusted Heyman. He no longer trusted the system. He only trusted blood, but blood had already betrayed him once. Tension began to simmer even inside the new faction. Jacob Fatu was still a lone wolf at heart. He respected Roman, but he didn't worship him. And Zilla, he was loyal, but hungry. Too hungry. In a backstage segment never aired on TV, Roman was overheard talking to Jacob. I brought you in because you earned it. I brought Zilla in because I needed someone I could mold. But if either of you cross me, I'll bury you where you stand. Jacob stared back, unfazed. Then don't give me a reason. The truce was real, but fragile. Meanwhile, Solo began to resurface, sending messages through unexpected faces. Former allies. Surprise run-ins at house shows. Tampered matches. Interference in the shadows. His fingerprints were everywhere, even if his face wasn't. One night, Zilla Fatu's rental car was found in the arena parking lot, with the words "I never left" scratched into the hood. There was no doubt who had done it. Solo Sikoa was coming back, not for gold, not for TV time, but for revenge on the family who exiled him, and when he returned, he wouldn't come alone. Survivor Series. The one night a year when factions wage war, legacies collide, and betrayals carve new scars into WWE history. But no one, not the fans, not the talent, not even the WWE executives, was prepared for what would happen this year. The main event was set, Team Roman Reigns versus Team Cody Rhodes, a battle that had been building for months. Roman had handpicked his soldiers, Jacob Fatu and Zilla Fatu flanking him, with two more allies whose names had not even been revealed before the match. The tribal chief was stepping back into battle to prove that his new empire was not only alive, but unstoppable. The stage was massive. Chicago. 19,000 strong. Every seat filled. The atmosphere was tense, volatile. Roman's music hit. He emerged, slow and deliberate, ice cold as granite. Behind him, Jacob and Zilla, focused, fists taped, silence in their steps. They looked ready. But they were walking into a trap, they just didn't know it yet. Team Cody had already entered the ring, surrounded by thunderous cheers. Seth Rollins, Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, and a surprise fourth member, AJ Styles. The match began with immediate chaos. The crowd ate it up. Bodies flying, tables snapping, weapons spilling across the canvas. It wasn't just Survivor Series, it was war. But 20 minutes in, something happened. The lights flickered, not the usual production glitch. A deliberate, ominous flicker, and then, total blackout. For 9 full seconds. When the lights returned, one man stood at the top of the ramp, Solo Sikoa, unannounced. Uninvited. Unforgiven. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Most screamed. He was dressed in all white. Prison whites. Hair loose. Face like stone. In his hand, a steel chain. Roman's expression changed instantly. Not fear. Not shock, something worse, recognition. Solo walked slowly to the ring, not breaking eye contact. He stepped over the barricade, past the announce table, and climbed onto the apron, never looking at Cody or the others. His focus was singular. Roman turned to Jacob and Zilla. "Get him out of here," he barked, but neither moved. Jacob narrowed his eyes. Zilla clenched his jaw. Solo stepped into the ring, and then, chaos. Without a single word, Solo swung the chain and cracked it across Roman's back. The sound echoed through the arena. The crowd lost their minds. Jacob lunged. Solo ducked and Samoan spiked him in the throat. Zilla charged, but Solo caught him, lifted him, and planted him with a spinning runnage through a table. The entire ring descended into madness. Roman, coughing, reached for the ropes, only to be grabbed by the collar and yanked up by Solo, eye to eye. "You made me this," Solo growled, his voice low, almost calm, and then, he headbutted Roman Reigns so hard, blood poured instantly from the tribal chief's nose. Officials swarmed the ring, but Solo was already gone. He didn't stay to pin. He didn't speak into a mic. He didn't pose. He just walked back up the ramp, blood on his chain, rage in his eyes. Behind him, carnage. Zilla lying unconscious in splinters, Jacob crawling on all fours, wheezing. Roman, bloodied, humiliated, stripped of control. And in that final shot before the broadcast cut off, the camera zoomed in on Paul Heyman, emerging from the shadows backstage, watching, smiling. He didn't say a word. But he didn't need to, because this time, Paul Heyman had backed Solo Sikoa, the prodigal cousin, the exile, the new architect of destruction, and the war had only just begun. The next day, WWE issued a statement: Solo Sikoa is officially reinstated. His new contract was signed in private 48 hours before Survivor Series. That's all they said. But the message was clear: Solo Sikoa wasn't coming back to rejoin the bloodline, he was coming to burn it down. The following Friday, Roman Reigns was conspicuously absent from SmackDown. Medical update: facial fracture. Out indefinitely. Paul Heyman appeared in the ring instead. He stood alone, holding the mic with trembling hands, then raised it. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman." The crowd booed. He smiled: "And I stand before you not as Roman Reigns' advocate. Not as the bloodline's wise man. but as a man who survived. He paused. You all thought I was loyal to Roman. To the throne. To the legacy. But what you forgot is that I'm loyal to the power. And then the crowd erupted.